For the last year of my life, I have really been digging deep into fermenting foods, seeing what types of fermentation processes I can do easily in my own kitchen, other than, of course, the ones you're not aware of or not in control of, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. Like when you open your fridge and you pull out some food and it's got some green mold on it, or you leave a drink out and it starts smelling funny. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the things that we are in control of, the things where you're taking delicious natural food and you're letting magic sort of take over, letting the elements take over and turning it into something special, something that tastes super amazing and that can actually have a lot of health benefits. Through my crazy journey, I've been posting a bunch of the experiments to social media, and a lot of you seem to enjoy it, and some of you want to go a little deeper into it and actually learn how to do it yourself. So that's what we are doing here, the Beginner's Guide to Fermenting Food, and we are starting off with this glorious bastard right here. They call this the elixir of life. This is kombucha, however you want to pronounce it. And there are so many freaking reasons why I love this stuff. Number one being it's very easy to make. That's why we're starting off with kombucha, because it's one of the easiest fermentation processes. Once you get it, you'll be making it for the rest of your life. Number two is this is the best replacement for soda that I found. Not that I even was a big soda drinker, but I found that sometimes you get that craving. You just want something slightly sweet with that carbonation that's kind of filling. It's like a filling drink. It's more than just drinking water or drinking juice. It's got something special to it that really hits the spot. Number three, and anyone who has bought kombucha in the store knows about this issue. When you do buy it in the store, it costs a lot of money. Here's a store-bought kombucha, and this thing costs in New York, it's $4.99. I mean, you can get it for cheaper. I've seen it for like $3. You can buy it in bulk. It's gonna be a little cheaper, but no matter what, it's gonna be expensive if you buy it in the store. And when you make it at home, it is like freaking pennies to make. You are saving so much money. You can brew these huge batches, have these reusable bottles. You'll be saving a ton of money for a delicious drink. And of course, the last reason why I love making this stuff at home are the benefits of consuming it. This is a probiotic filled drink, and it's got all that good bacteria in there that helps you break things down in your stomach. It helps with digestion. There's a reason they've been making this stuff for thousands of years. They call it the elixir of life, and it really just makes me feel great when I drink it. Like imagine a soda, when after you drink the soda, you feel better, you feel great. That is kombucha, and it is freaking awesome. So let's get into the making of this stuff. The key element and the workforce behind the fermentation of kombucha is a thing called a SCOBY. This thing that looks like a giant gooey booger. It's a crazy looking thing, but it's actually a colony of yeast and bacteria that produces this delicious drink. You can just go on Amazon, you can buy this one right here for like $7. It works great. It's just a little piece, but that little piece will ultimately build up and you can brew gallons of kombucha with just a little piece for $7. It's incredible. Or the other way is knowing someone that makes kombucha, because every time you make a batch of kombucha, you basically grow another SCOBY, like another layer. So they can take their old layer or their new layer and they can give you that, and you can start your kombucha process with that SCOBY. Once you get your SCOBY, we gotta create a nice little environment for that SCOBY to thrive in, and it's really simple. All it takes is brewed tea and sugar. So basically sweet tea and SCOBY makes kombucha, but there are some ratios that you gotta deal with. I'm gonna show you mine right here. These are my ratios. These work great for me. You'll see a bunch of different stuff out there. Generally, it's somewhere around here, but these are tested and approved. And I would definitely use black tea, because black tea, what happens is when you brew it, it can hold up against the heat. And that's a big thing, because we're gonna brew our tea longer than a normal tea would brew. We're gonna brew it for about 10 minutes. Whereas green tea, if you boiled green tea for 10 minutes, it's gonna get super bitter and you might run into some more difficulty. So I highly suggest black tea, at least for beginners. Those ratios make about 2 gallons of kombucha. It's a solid amount, so feel free to cut it in half or do whatever you want. But we're gonna go with those just for this recipe to make it easy. And I'm gonna start out with half the water. So I'm gonna boil about 8 cups of water in here. And once it comes to a boil, I'm gonna add in all my tea. And I've got this fancy tea maker that does loose tea, but you can also use the tea bags. So I'm adding in 24 grams of tea. That would be 12 tea bags. And I'm gonna let that sit off the boil for about 10 minutes and just let that infuse. And it's a black tea, so it's gonna get super dark. Once your tea is brewed, you gotta now add your liquid to some sort of vessel that holds it. And there are a ton of different kombucha brewing sets with specific vessels that you can buy, but I'm just using this cheap glass jar. It works great. Just don't use plastic. You'll run into issues. I'm taking my tea, and that's brewed in only half of the water for the recipe. And the reason I do that is because then I pour it back into another 8 cups of liquid, and that will cool the mixture down. You could brew the full amount of liquid with the tea, but the problem is you probably don't have a huge tea kettle for that, and also it's gonna take a lot longer to cool, and you can't move on to the next steps if it's not cooled down. So that's a good little trick. Once your liquid goes in, you're gonna go in with your sugar. I'm going in with 1.5 cups. That's the ratio I need. And it looks like a decent amount of sugar, and it is, but remember, the bacteria and the yeast are actually feeding off that stuff. So by the time you have your actual brewed kombucha, there's not gonna be that much sugar in it. It's already been fed off. That is the food it needs. So I gave it a stir around just to get all that sugar dissolved. And then you're gonna let it sit, and you gotta let the temperature come down to at least 90 degrees or you'll start to kill your SCOBY if you put it in there. So if you don't have a thermometer, I would just let it come down for a few hours till it doesn't feel hot anymore. Once that liquid is cooled down, we are gonna go in with that SCOBY and also add in about a cup of kombucha. And the reason you're doing this is you're increasing the acidity level, so you're kind of getting it ready to brew. If there's no kombucha in there, your SCOBY is just gonna die off, and you don't want that. So if you don't have liquid from your last batch, just go out, buy a kombucha, like a plain kombucha. If you start adding flavored kombuchas, you're gonna have a lot of issues as well. So definitely just plain kombucha and add in about a cup. But if you're coming off another batch, just save the liquid from the last batch, about a cup, and you can add that in there. Just let that SCOBY float and find its place on its own. You don't have to place it anywhere. Don't worry about that. Then you have to cover the top so you're not getting any particles or random stuff in there. You're not sealing it tight, but you're taking something like a cheesecloth or a towel and then just putting a rubber band on that. It's just a little layer of protection from the outside world. You still want it to breathe in there, but you gotta keep stuff out. I would suggest going the extra yard and getting organic material to cover it, because I have run into the issues where the little particles will come down into the kombucha from the cloth, and it can totally throw it off. You've got living bacteria in there, and they'll feed off anything. So I have ruined batches by, like, definitely don't fuck with paper towel. I have screwed that up before. Little piece of paper towel in there, whatever they're putting in that stuff will completely screw up your kombucha, but that's part of the process. We're learning as we go. You will screw up. It's all right. Now you're good to go. We're gonna just tuck that away and forget about it. I put it in my closet. I like giving it a nice dark environment, but also you want a solid temperature between 66 degrees and 78 degrees, something in that range. You don't want it too hot or you don't want it too cold. Fermenting is like that nice middle ground. It's like a low and slow, but not too low. Definitely not too hot. A lot of people actually will bless their kombucha before they let it ferment, and I don't think it's a bad idea. You know, there's living stuff in there. Just give it a prayer, set your intentions. So now you're just gonna let it sit and let it do its thing. You gotta give it its space. Don't be clingy. I think the hardest part about making kombucha and fermentation in general is the patience it takes. I know in the beginning I was so excited when I was making it, and I was like messing with the bottle and checking it out, seeing what's happening. but that will screw it up because you're just constantly altering the flow, the life in there, and that's not going to give you good results. So I have found over time that just giving it its space is the best thing for your kombucha. And I try to ferment mine for at least 7 to 10 days. That seems to be like the golden zone. The longer you let it ferment, the more acidic it gets, which potentially could be better for you, but it's gonna taste a little worse. It will start tasting more like vinegar. And I guess as you get more of a taste for kombucha, you'll probably enjoy the stronger taste. But in the beginning, I would suggest just, giving it those 7 to 10 days. That's gonna be a solid tasting kombucha right there. So now that it has brewed for about 7 days, you can check that thing. And the first thing you will notice is the liquid is going to change colors from a dark, really dark black tea color to like a nice golden brown. That's your first sign of goodness. Then you're gonna wanna check the top of the SCOBY and just make sure you don't have any crazy growth on there. I would say the number one growth that is not good is like a blue fuzz. That has happened to me before, and that means your kombucha is bad. So if you see like an intense color, like a blue or a red, that's a bad sign. But the truth is, it's gonna look pretty strange no matter what. It is a weird bacterial mushroom growth. There's gonna be strings hanging potentially. That stuff doesn't mean it's bad. So as long as you don't see like fuzz or some crazy colors, you're all right. If you want to take your kombucha making to the next level, I would suggest getting a little pH monitor right here, a pH checker. I got this for like 10 or 15 bucks on Amazon, but you can also get those pH strips. A lot of kombucha sets come with it, and you're looking for a pH between about 2.5, 2.7 to 3.5. That is like your good kombucha zone right there. That means it's perfect. I checked mine right here and that was at a 2.8, 2.9. That is good to frickin' go. That is your first fermentation of kombucha. You can see it's a little carbonated and it is fine to drink in this phase. Still very tasty after that first ferment. Definitely drinkable, but once it hits that second fermentation and it carbonates and takes on those flavors from the fruit and all the other things you add, that's when you get into a whole different category of flavor. It's kind of like a wine. That aging process really helps, so I highly suggest the second fermentation. For me, this is where kombucha making gets super fun. It's in the second ferment, which is the bottling stage. And in the bottling stage, the main thing that's happening is you're carbonating your kombucha, but it's also when you can add flavor. You cannot add flavor when you're doing the first ferment. That's when all the action's happening and it's doing the craziness with bacteria. Any type of flavor will throw that out. But in the second phase, you're taking your SCOBY out and it's a chance to really infuse some goodness in here. So you got to open these very carefully as well, as they pop. Oh, jeez. Okay. I wasn't very careful with that.